It was everything I expected, honestly. I mean, it was just that getting to go and actually feel like I was bringing something to the film, because even though extras, like, I'm not discrediting that at all. Like, extras are so important. Like, just think about the movies that you watch or the shows that you watch, and your lead actor goes into a restaurant and no one's there. Like, you notice it. But when they're there, you don't notice it because it's normal, you know? So even though being an extra was so important to a film and I knew that I was bringing something to it, at that age, I just wanted more. You know, I mean, I don't know if it was just the ambition or if it was just like, I need to feel like I'm progressing, which now that I'm actually reflecting on it, I'm like, I think that's just my nature. It's like if I don't feel like I'm progressing, and it's been that way since I was little. But it's like I always have to be moving forward.
All right, welcome to The Path Distilled. I'm your host, Kevin Harris. My co-host is Lauren Tashman.
Hi, everybody.
And our guest today is Desiree Page. She's an artist manager and she's founder of 318 Management. Welcome to the show, Desiree.
Hi, good morning.
Good morning. Can you tell us a bit about yourself?
Yeah, so I currently live in Nashville, and I'm managing a country artist named Garrett Jacobs.
Can you tell us how a little bit how you got into management, going back, or where your story begins? I guess is where we should.
So oh my goodness, it was such a road to management, honestly. I started in acting as a very little kid. I was about 4 or 5 when I really kind of showed the interest in it. I was really interested in music too, but I was actually tone deaf. And so my parents were so sweet. They would still dress me up and let me, murder people's ears for a while. But then I met Sandra Bullock, which I think I sent you guys that photo.
Yeah, I'm going to bring that up.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so I met her, and it was so random. I was such a weird kid, and I was in an antique store when I met her, and I just loved going antiquing. And my dad was actually gone. He was going to get coffee. I'm from a very small town in Louisiana, and going to get coffee right down the street. And I walked into this lady while I was antiquing, and I just started talking to her for whatever reason. And she was just like, "You're so articulate. Like, how old are you? Like, how are you functioning like this? And why are you antiquing? Where's your parents?" Like, she was so kind. And basically I told her, like, he was coming right back, and I was like, oh gosh, my dad's about to get in trouble. But it turns out, like, she just actually talked to him and was just like, she is so wise beyond her years, and all these compliments. And she was like, has she ever thought about acting? And obviously I hadn't. And so basically what happened was she kind of exchanged contact information with my dad about like local casting companies and casting directors. And shortly after, I kind of got into the whole acting world. And from there, I mean, oh my gosh, I feel like this story could be so long, so forgive me. I'm like trying to shorten it for you guys. But basically, I got into acting, and I was in and out of school. I didn't really, go to school. Like, acting was my main thing, my main priority. And again, I come from a small town, so we just had to go and like talk to a school board, and I had a teacher on set, and I really just kind of dove into that world. And I think I was in junior high. I met another actor artist named Neo, and he's like a very big R&B pop singer songwriter. And at that time, I think I was in 6th or 7th grade, maybe a little bit older. But I was basically like, I mean, when you're in 6th and 7th grade, you're having feelings, you're emotional. And at that time, I kind of like tried to be a songwriter. And they were talking about it, and these are all grown-ups like all around me. I'm the only kid around, and they were talking about writing for Beyonce or something. And I was like, yeah, well, I write songs too, or something. I said something like that. And he was like, oh, really? Like, can I see what you write? Can I hear it? I was like, oh, I don't sing. Like, I only write. And basically, he looked at my lyrics and he was just kind of like, this is really, mature for your age. Like, this is really good. Like, you should get into songwriting. And he just kind of told me a little bit about it, like, spent some time with me. I mean, I was on this set for, I don't know, months on end. So we were all like a family. And I basically, that eventually led me to Nashville. And then when I was in Nashville, which is, I'm in high school at this point, I just kind of, honestly, I was kind of a creep. I would just kind of creeped on everyone, like, okay, who is who? What is a songwriter? What does a songwriter do? What is a publishing company? Like, I had no idea that this whole world existed. And so I just kind of like looked into people that knew, that were in it, that knew what was going on, that was involved in the community. And at that time, like, MySpace was still a thing, like Facebook was just becoming a thing. And so I just kind of like friended everybody. And as weird as that sounds, I just friended everybody. I kept up with them, I kept in contact with them, and then some I eventually went on to become friends with, and then they became like bigger artists or touring artists. And in high school, I can't just pick up and move to Nashville. So I, when local artists would come in, I would just basically ask like, hey, can I sell your merch? Can I help out? Can I do something? And then just kind of like shadow their tour manager and just learn everything that I could when they would come through. And then finally, my senior year, there was an opportunity for me to move. So yeah, that's like a very short like version because there's so many like moving parts to the story. But
no, it's fascinating. Can you take us back to between the time you met Sandra Bullock and when you started working with the casting agents? How did that transition happen? Was it
yeah, so it's so interesting. When I started working, when I met her, it was actually a year to the date of, because I believe, oh man, my dad is going to kill me because I forgot the exact date. It's either February 12th or February 13th. I don't remember, but I met her either on February 12th or February 13th, and a year to the date, I got my first speaking part, like speaking role, speaking like in a movie. Like, I'm no longer an extra. I was saying words on camera in an exact year. So basically what happened was there was like local casting directors in my area, in my hometown. They were filming a bunch of movies, and it was right before Katrina, because I'm from North Louisiana, and it was right before then. So Louisiana was basically like known as like Hollywood South, and so there was all kinds of different films and things going on. And the casting director that she introduced us to was the one working on the film that she was currently filming in town. And so if you're wondering why was Sandra Bullock in Louisiana at a random antique store, it was because she was in the middle of filming, and I guess she just wanted to go shop. But yeah, so I basically got connected with that casting director, and I just started working like as an extra or anything that I could do. I was like, do y'all need me to like serve food? But obviously there are child labor laws and they can't do that. And so I was just hungry to get on set and to learn about it. So yeah, hope that answers.
What was it about that it sounds like, truly excited you and like drew you in?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think it was just because it was something different. Because I mean, coming from a small town, like everyone, and there's nothing wrong with your 9-to-5 jobs, like I thought I wanted to do that at one point, but it was just something different. And my family, they were a very low income family, like didn't have the means to really do it. Like I didn't get headshots until I don't know when. Like I was so far in my career just because it was expensive. And so I think I saw it as like an opportunity. It was more of like, oh wow, like I watch these people on TV. Like it wasn't about the money, but it was more about like, oh, this is cool. Like, you mean I can like read something and be someone else and not like, be me for a minute. And I was like, that's kind of cool. But then like I'm always still me, and then I get paid for it, and then they have free food. yes. like that was my thought process as a kid. I was like, oh, there's a thing called crafty, what?
And
So yeah.
so do you remember a sense of excitement when you arrived on your first set and started working?
Oh yeah, no. I don't know if it was excitement or nerves or both, because I was very nervous because I didn't have a lot of friends in school, so I was kind of like, and again, I was doing an extra role that time, and I don't even remember what movie it was. I know that sounds so bad. Like I remember my first speaking part, but because I was so young, but I do remember like getting on set and thinking, oh, there are going to be other kids. Like, are they going to like me? Am I going to fit in? Like, it was almost just like going to a new school, which thankfully I grew up in the same house. I always went to the same school, just moving. But like, I was just kind of like, am I going to fit in? Like, that was my, like, I guess, anxiety as a kid, just because when you go on set and you're like, oh, okay, like, this is so fun. You're so excited about it because it's something new. But then you realize, oh, there are other kids and you have experiences of not making like a lot of friends or having a lot of friends. You're just kind of like, okay, now there's the nerves. Like, am I going to have a friend? Am I going to fit in? Am I going to be accepted into this, But yeah, so that's kind of how I felt about it.
And then, so take us from there. What happens between then and your first speaking role?
Yeah. Yeah. So I don't know how many extra roles I worked that year. I think every movie that came through, I was on it in some form. And it was just kind of when you're on set, you're like, okay, like you get called, and you're an extra, you think that is it, like you've made it. And then you get there and you're like, oh, I'm just walking back and forth, or I'm just sitting in one spot. And I was like, this isn't fun. And in my mind, like, this sounds so bad to say, and I'll probably regret admitting this, but in my mind, I was like, man, like, I don't remember who it was, but there's an actress, and I was like, I could say that line better than she did, and they kept having to redo it and redo it and redo it. And in my mind, I was like, I just want to do that, And so I remember telling the casting director that hired me, I was like, hey, this is cool and all, but how do I do more? And they kind of walked me through that process. And I actually didn't have an agent when I got my first speaking role. It was my relationship with the casting directors that they basically, they knew that I was hungry. They knew that I wanted to do it. They knew that I was a little more than your average kid. Like, when I was on set, I wasn't a disturbance. I sat in a corner, I read, I like drew pictures or something. So I wasn't one of those kids that went on set and like wouldn't be quiet when they're like, okay, rolling, like no one say anything or play with other kids and be a disturbance. So they kind of really took a chance on me and just let me audition. And then when I got my first speaking role, which was only like a line or two, but when I first got that, after that, then I got an agent.
So what did it feel like to get that role?
Oh man, it was great. It was very like, again, it was I made it moment. Like, it was never, I mean, when I had that part, I didn't really, by that time I was kind of used to the set atmosphere, and everyone on a set, like all the crew, they all feel like your family, like the PA becomes like your best friend, and it's just like big or small, like it doesn't matter if you're an assistant director or if you're literally the guy who puts the tape on the ground, everyone is kind of treated, in my eyes at that time, was treated equally, and like, was my family. And so by that time, the crew that is normally on sets, I've already known most of them from other sets. So it was just kind of like, oh yeah, I get to go and see, my friend Greg, or I get to go and see somebody that I know. So yeah, it was really fun.
What was your experience of, having that first speaking role? Was it like you expected, or was it different?
Yeah, no, it was everything I expected, honestly. I mean, it was just that getting to go and actually feel like I was bringing something to the film, because even though extras, like, I'm not discrediting that at all. Like, extras are so important. Like, just think about the movies that you watch or the shows that you watch, and your lead actor goes into a restaurant and no one's there. Like, you notice it. But when they're there, you don't notice it because it's normal, So even though being an extra was so important to a film and I knew that I was bringing something to it, at that age, I just wanted more. You know, I mean, I don't know if it was just the ambition or if it was just like, I need to feel like I'm progressing, which now that I'm actually reflecting on it, I'm like, I think that's just my nature. It's like if I don't feel like I'm progressing, and it's been that way since I was little. But it's like I always have to be moving forward. And so when it going back to like what it was like, it was just one of those things where I knew I had to do it, and how I felt about it was just like everything I pictured, everything I wanted. I mean, it was just another one of those milestones of like, okay, wow, like I'm here, like I'm doing this, cool, you know.
So what happens next?
Yeah, so so after that, like I said, when I met Neo, he kind of led me to Nashville, and working on that film, I will just say that film, it was Battle Los Angeles. That film was probably like that crew, that everyone, that is like my family. Like I still talk to so many people from that set. Like we check on each other like during quarantine, you know. But no, I love that crew. And so when I met him, that's kind of when things kind of changed a little bit, just because I realized like I didn't really like acting as much. You know, I want to say I was in 7th or 8th grade because it was right before high school. But we were filming that for like 8 months. Like it was the longest crew I've worked with, and that's probably why we're all like family. But yeah, no, we were working on that for so long in North and South Louisiana, and we had a premiere in LA, I want to say my freshman year. And it took them a long time to make the movie, just because there were so many like graphics and animations and all that kind of stuff. So like there's aliens in it. So so yeah, when we filmed in LA, I went and visited with like major agents, like with major companies, and like they were like wanting to sit me down, and they're like, okay, like you're not 16 yet, like, you know, we need to get you in acting classes, we need to get you like trained in seasons, because all of these certain shows are in pilot for Disney. And you know, they were like, basically, you're the perfect Disney kid. And at that time I was just like, man, that means I have to move out here. My family didn't have the means to do that, but I had a cousin that was living out there. And like there was a way for me to figure it out if I really wanted to do it, but I knew that like deep down I didn't. So my dad was very angry. I told him, I was like, I don't want to do this. Like, I don't want to do this anymore. And it was basically, it was like a lot of self-reflection, and like a time for me to have to think about what I wanted to do with my life. Like most people have that moment, you know, their senior year in high school, but this was like me going into my freshman year of high school. So 4 years early. I was like, okay, do I want to move out to LA? Do I really want to have my family make this big of sacrifice for something that I'm not sold on? And do I not want to have those years of high school memories? Even though I didn't have that many friends, I started making a couple, like I had one friend. And so it was like, you know, I might not get to go to homecoming, I might not get to go to prom, I might not get to have those memories with people that people always talk about. Like, you know, you look back on your high school days, like, and you know, it's such a sweet moment in your life and you'll never get that back, you know. But like acting is always going to be there. So I was like, acting's always going to be there. If I really want to do it, I can do it after high school. So that's when I decided to quit acting.
So how did the people that were prospecting you feel about that? Did they tell you were making a mistake, or did they respond? The agents that would be, did they tell you that you were making a mistake, or did they say anything?
Yeah, well, so it was actually because I was only there for I think 2 or 3 weeks at that time. And they actually told me, you know, because it was a lot and you're young, they're like, you know, you guys think about it as a family. They were very interested in me, but when I just kind of told them no, I mean, they have like 17 other me's, you know, like I don't think they were sad, because they were never like, you know, you're making a mistake or whatever. They're like, okay, well, you know, we wish you the best, like that whole spiel. But yeah, no, I mean, they didn't like give us any like, oh, like, you know, you're making a mistake or any kind of thing like that. Because they have so many other people that they're also looking at. So, so yeah.
And so you're kind of going into or just starting high school at this time. What then happens for you? Did you kind of already make the shift now into music, or was there a little bit of a time there?
Yeah. So I my dad actually had me get a job. I had to get like a work permit or whatever, because it was kind of like, I was so used to making my own money and like also helping my family and like, helping them out financially. And so I had to get a job at a Mexican restaurant. Well, I loved it and I'm thankful for it. And if he watches this, loved my job, but I hated it. I hated it just because I was like, I know that I don't want to do this forever. And I know that, like, I mean, it taught me so much. Like, I daily, every time I go to a restaurant, I think about when I used to work at one, for years. And so I was just kind of normal for a little while, but I was still so tuned into music. I was so interested in Nashville. And at that point, like, I had never been, and I knew that I wanted to go. And eventually I, got to make the trip. And I just, like I said, like, I kind of just creeped on people. And so, like, before I even got to Nashville, I knew, like, the hot spots, like, where to go to find good songwriters and, like, listen to good live shows. Like, I knew everything, and I had never set foot in that town. And, I mean, yeah, basically it was just kind of like I had this obsession with music and with songwriting, and I would just reach out to whoever I could that was coming through town. And some of those people were like Dustin Lynch, him and his whole crew and family. Like, somehow I became friends with his cousins. I was a creep. And if they're watching this, I love you, Blake. But I kind of creeped on them, and I was just like, hey, I'm really interested in this country music thing. Like, you're doing it, like, teach me. Like, what is it that you do? What is it that your team does? Like, how do you do it? What's the process? And they were so kind. And that was before, Dustin blew up. And I basically kind of got to shadow his tour manager. And there were so many people like that. There were, I'm trying to think. Kelsey Ballerini, before she even got a pub deal, I knew her, and I really got to kind of get to know her and watch her journey. Like, she was in college for a while, and I saw her play at the Bluebird one time when I was in Nashville. And again, this was before she had a pub deal, before anything. And it turned out that one of the guys that was in her round that was a songwriter was Forrest Whitehead, and he actually is from my hometown.
Wow.
Had no idea. So it was almost just like God, like, showing me, like, hey, like, you were meant to be here. You'll have a connection with, someone that's here. They'll talk to you. They'll get to know you, that kind of thing. So I just met like a bunch of writers and artists and developed relationships with them. And all throughout high school, when they would come through, or if I would go there, I'd be like, hey, can I sell merch? Can I do something for you? I'll get you a latte, like, I will do anything, because I knew I was in high school and nobody could hire me. I couldn't just like drop out, like, couldn't do that. So yeah.
So it sounds like you wanted to be close to the business regardless of what being close was at the time.
Oh yeah, 100%. 100%.
Okay, so what happens next in your story?
Yeah, so from high school, I'm kind of doing that for like 3 years, like up until my senior year. And then my senior year, in high school, they're like, hey, you got to start applying for college, like, got to figure out what you want to do. And like, my counselor, I don't know if she convinced me or if somehow like I convinced myself that I wanted to be a nurse. I have no idea. So I was like, okay, I'm just gonna apply to college and be a nurse. And like, I think I spent like 150. I don't know how many applications I put in, and like, you're having to pay $30 every time. And I just applied to like every college, like all the ones in Nashville, all the ones down in the South, everywhere for nursing. And halfway through, I think this was like October maybe of my senior year, I was like, I don't want to be a nurse. What am I doing? Like, I don't even like shots myself. I can't give someone a shot. And so basically, I called up a bunch of my casting director friends, and I was like, guys, like, because I hadn't spoken to them in like 3-4 years. Like, they've kept up with me, they see me on Facebook or whatever, but haven't spoken to them in a very long time. And I was just like, look, I'm gonna be 18 in January, and I'm in my senior year. Do you need someone to come file paperwork? Like, I need to find some job because I'm not about to go to college. Like, my mom is gonna be so mad, but I'm not going. Like, I'm not gonna waste money and have this financial burden of something that I don't even want to do. I thought it was right. So I just asked them if they had any odd jobs. Like, I was to the point where I was like, I don't really know how to do makeup, but I'll be a makeup artist on set. Like, I'll go get a little license or, whatever. Like, I wanted to be part of the set and actually work behind the scenes or do something for the casting directors. And they basically called me about a month later in November, and they were like, hey, actually, I have an audition for you. We're going to start filming in December, but, we can kind of work out your age and kind of, figure out, like, what, like, I forget what it is. It's like little slips, and I have to go, like, legally, like, I have to have some kind of parental consent on it, as a minor. But so yeah, basically I just go on and work on this film, or it's a television show, and it's called Salem, and it's very interesting. But I don't recommend it if you want to binge watch it. It's very weird, but it's kind of cool if you're into like witches and stuff. But basically I am doing that, my senior year. Like, I finished high school, and I was like, okay, cool. Like, I finished it a little early. Not fully early, but like enough to where I was like, okay, like I have very minimum work my second semester. And yeah, so I just started filming that and got back into acting for those few seasons. But yeah, so as far as that part of the story goes, I thought it was only one season, and the show did very well, and it got 2 extra seasons, which basically means 2 more years. And so 3 seasons total. And basically after I graduated, or I'll back it up, on graduation, I did not even walk at my high school graduation because I was filming. I was on set, I was working, and I was like, you know what? My diploma is all I need. Mail it to me. I'll have it. Like, hopefully I don't need it. I'll stay in some kind of, creative path to where I don't have to need a high school diploma. But yeah, so then I basically worked on that set, and in between, like when we had off seasons, like we would work for 5 to 6 months at a time and then, be off. But on that set, I actually got to be, an actress in it. And I also got to be a PA on set. So I got to kind of, experience both ends of the industry, which was the first time I was able to, actually work on set and get to do the behind the scenes, like the true behind the scenes stuff, But yeah, so throughout that, I mean, I was traveling to Nashville, and I had a place, and I would only be there like half of the time, but I was in Nashville and just kind of like trying to immerse myself as now an adult, and I'm no longer like everyone's little sister or this little kid that's just trying to, sell merch.
And so did you have to go, obviously it resonated with you that there was a transition. Did you notice it at the time that you're not basically getting older, or that you're an adult now? What was that like, sorting through that in your own mind?
Yeah. So it was kind of weird, honestly, because I was always looked at like being in an industry, especially like acting or film, like at so young of an age, like you don't really realize like when there's a click, like especially with people that have known you since then, or they've always known you as like literally my nickname was Baby Des, so it was like they know me as this little kid, and or I'm speaking in reference to filming, like they know me as this little kid. So on Salem, when they now realize like, oh, she's an adult, like I'm out of high school and I'm actually working, but they still see me as a kid, it clicked for me then, where I was like, oh, like I'm now an adult, like I have to be responsible. I'm no longer like little Baby Des. And so going into Nashville, they didn't know me since I was that small, but they knew me as, this little girl in high school. And so I became like everyone's sister. And moving there and actually trying to get immersed, they're just kind of like, I mean, I'm not gonna lie, like I had a fake to get in to watch, shows. Like I did not have a sip of alcohol at a bar when I was there, like truly. But realizing like, were you just in high school like last year? Why are you here? And it was actually, I was at Whiskey Jam, but just because I loved, the whole thing that they have there in Nashville, like the live shows that they had every Monday. And so people were like, what are you doing? So yeah, it was definitely like a transition and like a point of where I was like, oh, okay, like I'm no longer this little kid, like I'm trying to be here professionally. And then like what I was after like I wanted to be a publisher. Like I was so sold. Like at that point I moved there for songwriting, but I learned within the move, like the first month or so, I was like, I don't want to be a songwriter. Like I could not do this every single day. I'm not this creative. Like I'm more of I hear a song, I know who it needs to go to for an artist to like cut. So I was really my main goal was to become a publisher in town. And that's like a big thing. Like you have to know a lot, like the right people and a lot of people to, really be a successful publisher or get that job, in general, or go to school for it.
And this was at the time that you were on set with Salem, right? So you're acting, you're behind the scenes, and you're also trying to now think about how to pursue music and a career in that.
Yeah. So Salem became more of a financial thing for me. Like I was in high school, like it paid very well. It paid better than my waitressing job and hostess job at a restaurant. And so it was one of those things where I was like, I need to financially get ahead. And it was also, it was something that I was so familiar with and that I knew since I was a kid. So it wasn't really work for me. I was like, I can make money and have fun. And to me, I was thinking resume at that point. I was like, if I can get, something in on the business side of making a movie, like I can go to Nashville and really bring something to the table. I was like, I know that they film award shows there. I know that they do probably some commercials. Like I looked into it, and I was like, I could either go in and work at a casting office. I could go in and work at an agency. I could go and do like something. So I knew that. And I was just thinking like resume building at that point. So, yeah.
So you're now on ground in Nashville. Is this where we are?
Yeah. Yeah.
What
I'm back
there?
and forth. Yeah. I'm back and forth. Sorry. Say it again.
So once you've arrived, what happens then?
Yeah, so I just get immersed into the community. I knew that songwriting was something I was so interested in, and honestly, I just really love getting demos, which a demo, if, for those that are listening that don't know, or for you guys don't know, it's basically when a songwriter or artist goes into a write, and they're writing their song and they finish it, and then they go in and cut vocals, but it's not like good enough for radio and to produce out, but it's more so like kind of like halfway done to where you get an idea of where the song is going, and that way publishers can then send it to say like Jason Aldean or Luke Bryan or somebody, and that way they're like, hey, do you like this song? And if they're like, yeah, I can hear myself on this, and then they'll cut it and make it full.
So you were writing songs and producing those demos?
Oh, no. I was just interested in them. I wanted to. Yeah, no. I couldn't. Oh gosh, no, I could not. I was basically just like friends with a lot of writers, and they would send me their music, and I'd be like, oh, hey, like you should send this to so and so. Like it wasn't even anything on a professional level. It was more of like me just trying to get into it. But yeah, no, I was sending that over and just sending them to like my friends, like my friend Dustin. Like he had just gotten a deal. He was, touring and like doing his thing. And I would just be like, hey, like, what do you think about this song? Like, hey, what about this one? Like, just trying to get their feedback. And then, obviously they were all my friends. So it was like positive. It was like, this is a really good song. I'm not going to cut it. Like, I've never gotten a song cut, but at least I know that like it was in that lane or in that direction. And they really liked that artist or songwriter. And they eventually work together. So yeah.
And so, so you established some connections. You're firmly planted in Nashville. When do you start working as an artist manager?
Yeah, so this is where the story gets interesting. So I was back in Nashville, and I was there for probably 2 years, working, again, all kinds of odd jobs. I worked at a tour company, like a tour bike company. Like, it's not what you think. It's like, I don't know if y'all have pedal taverns, but they're like these bikes that you pedal on, and they just basically feed you alcohol, and you pedal around the city.
Oh, like
And
the group ones. Yeah.
Nashville's pretty hilly. And so, like, I worked in the office and did like the scheduling and the booking and the check-in for all of that. I had that job. I was working at the mall. I was working again at a restaurant, like just trying to be able to stay in Nashville because it is very expensive. As you know, you live in New York, so I'm sure you know. So yeah, basically just trying to do that. And then at some point I was like, again, I'm tired of exactly what I was doing in Louisiana. I'm just paying more in rent, and it's just like, how do you break in professionally, especially when I didn't have college experience? I mean, I had real life experience, but I came to a point where I thought I needed both. So I started applying at jobs, and I remember I was at a company, which I will not say the name, but I was at a company, and I made it. I think I was auditioning. See, I'm still in film mode, but I think I was applying for a kind of like almost like a management somewhat job, like basically overseeing certain like books and like overseeing a team to where they go and like they have to make calls and stuff. But it was, again, in the music industry. And basically I made it so far to where I think it was between me and one other person. And I remember talking to the, I guess, person hiring me, and they basically told me, they're like, so, what is your desired salary? Like, we were talking on that kind of conversation. And so yeah, when it comes to, what was next, it was basically like I was in that meeting and just like, okay, like salary, like this is how much I need to live here and to live comfortably. And I, requested that because I knew what I was bringing to the table. So basically what happened was she told me, she was like, oh, you don't have, the education experience. Like, we really like your personality. We really, do like, what you've done and what you've accomplished. And we think you would be great in this field, but we can't offer you that much. And so I asked her, I was like, so, like, I started asking her questions. And I think this is kind of when something clicked for me. I was just kind of like, so you're telling me, like, if I had a degree, then I could ask for that much? And she was like, well, yes, basically. Like, I forgot what she exactly said, but she was just like, yes. And I said, okay, so I have a question. If I come to work my first day, if I accept the job, accept, the salary that, you've proposed, and I come to work my first day, what are you going to have me do? And then she answered the question. And then, which was basically, well, you have to go through this, the training process and blah, blah, blah. And like someone will kind of show you all of X, Y, and Z. And I was like, okay, cool. If I have a degree and I go to work on my first day, what are you going to have me do? And she just kind of smirked. And I was like, you're going to have me do the same thing. You're going to have me, and you're going to tell me what you want me to do for this job and how to do this job. The degree does not matter. I was like, I have the experience, the life experience, and the common sense to do this job fully to its ability that you need it done right now without a degree. And so obviously that conversation, because I was a little, manager in me that I didn't know was in me, came out. And so she was just kind of like, I see, where you're going. That's a very good point. And she said, I think her main headquarter office was in New York. And she said, well, you know what? I really like your spunk. And she was like, if you ever want to come work in New York, I can offer you that salary. I was like, if I ever come and work in New York, I'm going to need more than that.
That is very true.
Same thing, And in my head, I was like, it's so crazy how the workforce is set up, regardless of what industry you're in, because it's like, if you go to college and you get a degree, you have student loans that you have to pay off.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's like the salary you're making, you barely have enough to pay rent, especially in an entry-level job, to pay rent, pay a car note, pay insurance, pay your bills, and do everything, and pay your student loans. And so it was just, to me, I was so frustrated at that point, but I wanted to prove a point. So I enrolled into college.
How old were you when this happened?
Oh gosh, I think I was like 21. I think I was 21. I enrolled into college, and I was there. I went to MTSU in Murfreesboro, and I basically, I think I was there for like 3 semesters, maybe total. I became friends with my professors, and a funny story, if I may. I was in class, and I'm sitting there, and this was like my first semester there ever. I was in class, I forgot what it was. It was like intro to something. And basically, they're like, on the PowerPoint, there's like all these slides. This photo comes up, and the professor is like talking about this photo, and she's like, can anyone tell me about this photo? And it was kind of like a film class. It was about, I don't remember. It was like intro to film and multimedia or something. I don't know. But she was talking about the photo, and like, I didn't want to be that kid, but I had to be that kid. But I like raised my hand, and I was like, I know about this photo. It's set in X, Y, and Z times, and it turns out it was a photo of Salem, the show that I had just finished.
Wow.
And I was in it. And like, it was like the main, like Marilyn Manson is in that show, but he was the main subject in the photo. And then I was like off to the side. Like, you could clearly see my face, but I was off to the side. And I told her everything about it, told her the name of the photographer. I like knew everything about it. And she was like, I'm sorry, how did you know the name of the photographer? Like, you're correct, but how did you know like all this stuff? I was like, I don't want to be that person. I'll tell you after class. Because I didn't want to say it in front of, I was like, I don't want to say it in this auditorium of people. But she like eventually, she was like, no, like, what is it? And I was like, well, I'm in it. And she goes, you're in Salem? And she was apparently a fan of the show. And then it kind of, went from there. And then I talked to her after class, and then she actually wanted me to speak at her other classes, and like, she learned about what I have done and all this kind of stuff. And so it was an awkward moment for me. I was like, okay, like, I'm in college. I didn't really stay or get involved in anything, but I was like, I don't know if I want to speak to like these people that I'm literally in class with. So yeah, that kind of happened. And I eventually started speaking to, my peers. And like, kind of like, she had me actually later on in the semester, she had me kind of like talk to them, and they all had to take notes, and that was part of the grade. And so I'm just like, okay, this is weird, but yeah, so that was kind of basically what happened next. And then from there, it was really about me, again, just trying to work and make money. And I've started working on this, like, these award shows that happen, like CMT and Artist of the Year, that kind of stuff. So I got involved with a casting company in Nashville, and basically working with them and kind of telling them like, hey, like, I can do all these things. I can, be a PA, like, just extra like gigs to make money. And because now I'm in college, and I'm like, oh gosh, how am I going to pay for this? And so I started working audience coordination with a casting company, and getting to do that and work with CMT, and like meeting some of the executives at CMT, and eventually meeting a woman who had me, like, she had a talent agency. And this is where, when I said it gets interesting, she had a talent agency, but she didn't know how to kind of like bring it to the next level. I mean, she knew how to bring it to the next level, but she didn't have anyone to help her, and like, for me, I basically brought all of the knowledge that I had, and like all of the contacts that I had, to that agency. And if you hear thunder, I am so sorry. But basically, I brought everyone that I knew to that agency. And anyway, so what happened was, I started working at this talent agency and basically running it with her, you know, bringing all these new clients, bringing all these new talent and connections with, you know, casting directors that I had made since I was little. So, you know, I brought a lot of value to that company, and I worked that all throughout my college, if we even want to call it that, because I was mad the whole time. I was like, why do I have to take a math class? I'm not going into bookkeeping. Like, you know, I was so frustrated. And anyway, so then I have had a friend named Gavin DeGraw. He's an artist and singer, and, you know, he has a bunch of songs that you've probably heard and don't even know it's him. But I had him as a friend and almost like a mentor. And he just kind of sat me down one day and was just like, what are you doing in college? And it was, I will never forget, the line he used was, Desiree, college is referencing what I'm in college for music business and what I'm actually doing and what I've done my entire life. He said, Desiree, college is a daycare for grown-ups. He was like, you do not need to be in college. He was like, you need to drop out, and you're so ambitious. He used some explicitive words. He's like, you're very ambitious, and you just need to drop out and do your own thing. You know, like, you just need to manage, do whatever it is that you want to do. You don't need a degree. You don't need anybody to tell you that you can do that, you know? And I was like, okay. And like, we had a very long conversation about that. And he eventually like convinced me that I was wasting my time and my money. And like, I knew a lot of the answers in the beginning, or like, you know, in the early stages of the music business and how it runs. And it's very similar to the film industry, just different terms, you know. And I knew the film industry like inside and out. Like, I knew everything about it. So yeah, basically what happened was, not long after he had this conversation with me, I actually met Garrett, which is the artist that I manage. And it was just almost like God opening the doors of like, okay, here, I'm gonna place this person and have them tell you, you know, what to do, and then you're not gonna do it right away. But, you know, then I'm like, okay, here's this artist now that you can manage. And so that's kind of how it all happened, if that makes sense.
And so, have you already started 318 management at this point?
Yeah, no, I didn't. So what happened was, I met Garrett. I met him through a mutual friend, and had no intentions of managing him when I met him. My friend just basically called and was like, hey, I know this guy. He has like a big following on social media. He's wanting to do the artist thing, you know, but he doesn't know what to do. He's never been to Nashville. And it turns out he's from my hometown as well. Did not know him prior to meeting him, because he's a little younger than me. And so I was like, okay, like, you know, what exactly is he wanting to do? Is he a songwriter? Kind of talking to him. And so he basically puts me in contact with Garrett. Garrett had never written a song ever. He just had a voice and, you know, knew that he wanted to be on stage and be an artist for the rest of his life. And so I was like, okay, well, you know, him and his family were planning a trip to Nashville. And I was like, well, I have friends that are writers like that I've made. And I was like, I'll hook you up on some rights, because you definitely need to do that. And if you're good at that, then you need to move here and, you know, actually pursue the artist career. And I basically kind of helped him, you know, set up his first rights and all of that. And basically, it was so funny. It's just so funny how life happens. He came to Nashville. He wrote his first single, which is The Healing, with the writers that I hooked him up with. And I heard that song and I was like, you've never written? And he's like, no. And I, you know, texted the other writers. I was like, did he really write this song, or did y'all write this song? They're like, no. Like, he came in with the idea. Like, he pulled his weight. They're like, he's definitely new to songwriting. Like, he doesn't understand it, like the process of it, but he's good. And I was like, okay. So then, you know, I got him on Whiskey Jam, which is, you know, a local thing in Nashville, but it's becoming a very big thing all over. Like, everyone usually knows about Nashville. If you Google Nashville, I'm sure Whiskey Jam comes up. So he was 18. And again, it's a 21 and up bar, but I got him in to play, and he just had X's on his hands. And basically what happened was his mom, I just like became really good friends with his mom, and I was showing them around town. Like they were here for a week, you know, showing them all these cool places. And we had a conversation at some point, like eating lunch or dinner. And she was just kind of like, you know a lot about what you're talking about of like being an artist and like doing all this stuff. Like, cause I was just educating them. I was like, hey, you want to make sure you don't do X, Y, and Z. You want to make sure you don't sign this deal or that deal. Like this is ideally what you want in, a publishing situation or a label situation or, all of that. And they had no idea of, what master royalties are or what any kind of royalties are, how you make money. They didn't know that. So I was trying to educate them. And she basically told me, she's like, well, you know what you're talking about. Like, why don't you just manage him? And in my head, I was just kind of like, I kind of wanted to do this. And like, Gavin told me I should. And it was just one of these things that was, again, it was just like all like, I don't want to say given to me, but it was just very clear that this is something that I needed to do and that I obviously wanted to do. And so at that point, I said, okay, well, I'll work with him if he moves to Nashville. But if he doesn't move to Nashville, he's not going to make it, And a month later, they moved him to Nashville. He was able, he decided to not go to college and not do, anything else but that. And so he was kind of in the situation that I was in and, moved to Nashville, started working really, really hard. And I was still at the agency that I was working for. And we just kind of like, he just worked for about a year, just really perfected his songwriting craft and perfected everything he was doing. And then at that time, I'm wearing all the hats. So I'm his accountant, I'm his lawyer, which I don't have a law degree, but I was like finding all these like things on LegalZoom and then like rewording them how I wanted them. And I was literally everything, his booking agent, his song plugger, like all of the things. And for about a year, I was working with him. And then I realized, you know what, like I can't have my attention split. I can't be trying to develop this agency. Like I've done so much that I could do. And, there just wasn't, I didn't feel that there was anything else that I could give that talent agency, especially with not being like the co-owner or not being able to have my opinion like solidified in how I wanted the business to go. So I was like, I have to either make a choice of I either need to be all in for managing this artist or I need to keep having all these multiple jobs like I have my entire life. So I finally decided like, I'm going to open up my management company because I love helping people and I love people, asking me questions or asking me how do I navigate something and then me helping them figure out a solution. So basically I just kind of started 318 management, mainly because, 318 is our area code and that's kind of where everything was pointing to and so much had happened for me from where I'm from. And then with Garrett also being from 318, I was like, it's the only thing I could think of. I would try to sit down and come up with names of management companies of what I wanted, even researching other ones, and like, okay, what is a common theme? And like, honestly, I just kind of came up with the fact there's always like, it's 3 letters. There's WME, which is a booking agency. There's CAA, it's 3 letters. There's one here in Nashville called 888. There's one called Red Light, or something like that. But I was just like, 3 is apparently the number for management companies. So 318, perfect. So that's how, I started managing and how I kind of got into managing Garrett.
I'm curious, given everything you've told us at this point, it's interesting because you had the experience of being kind of like the front stage person, right? Like you were the actress and you've also had a ton of experience being the backstage person. And it sounds like you really gravitated towards that. Why do you think that was?
I think it was mainly because, I don't know, I think, that's such a good question because I'm sitting here like, that is so true. And I don't know like why I gravitated towards it because I was so front and center. Like I want to, like I strive so long to have that speaking role, you know, but I think it was more of like my brain. I don't know if that's like a normal answer. It was just my brain, because it was like how I work and how I function. Like as a kid, reflecting back, I was in control of my career the whole time. Like I actually had sit down talks with my dad. And my dad's a lot older than most people's dads, but had to sit down talk with him of like, hey, this is my thing. Like if they're gonna ask a question about can I be somewhere, I'm gonna answer. like I was very bossy. Like my parents will tell you I was very, very bossy. And so I think that was like, looking back, it was just always like, even though I was like front and center in a lot of things, I was still behind the scenes at the same time, because I was the one, like I wanted to pick how wide the trim was on my headshot, like very nitpicky about certain things, very, very like, if it's not my way, I'm going to be mad about it. And not in like a spoiled brat kind of way. It was more of like, I want to be in control of my career, because in my mind, I can strategize how I want this to go, kind of thing. So it was really just my brain, like kind of telling me like, you know, hey, you've been doing this your whole life. You know, you've always been very particular about how things happen, or how an audition goes, or what is said to a casting director, because you know exactly how to, you know, win the audition, if that makes sense. So that's kind of, that would be my answer. Like it was just very weird, like how my brain worked, and how I realized like, oh, I've been doing this for so long. Like this is exactly what I want to do. And like when it comes to behind the scenes, like I can't sing. I'm tone deaf. So I'm not going to get up on that stage, you know, like, but I could definitely tell someone else when it doesn't sound right to me, you know, like when I'm like, I don't like that. And if I don't like that as a lover of music, I know other lovers of music will not love that. So.
And I'm curious, at that time in your life, did you realize that you were that much more driven and or analytical than other kids your age? Because you seem very driven from a young age, and analytical as well.
Yeah. So I don't think I ever realized it. I mean, I knew that I was weird. I always just thought I was weird, like because my family, like they didn't really. There was no like. I honestly should have been in therapy as a kid. Like if I looking back, if I were my parents and they saw how I hated cartoons, I hated Disney actually. Like I till this day I have never watched a Disney movie. Like I've never seen Lion King. I've never seen Cinderella. I don't like musicals. Funny enough, like you would think someone that loves film and loves music would love musicals. So it was like, as a kid, like when a kid tells you, I don't like this show on Disney that you're putting on, and they would rather watch like Three's Company or like, you know, Gilligan's Island or something.
We're kindred spirits. I was the same weird kid.
Yeah. So I was just kind of like I would rather do that. And then I really loved reading at a very young age. Like I loved vegetables. Like as a kid, like being a parent, if I were to go back and parent myself, I would have been like, I need to take this kid to therapy. Like something is wrong. And so for me, it never dawned on me that I was analytical until literally like I was living in Nashville and I was probably 20 years old. Like it was not until after looking back, I think I had like a moment of reflection at some point of where, you know, when I decided to go to college and when I decided to do all of that, that's kind of when I realized like I've been doing this my whole life. You know, like I've technically, like what I'm wanting to do, I've always done, and it just didn't dawn on me at that young age that I was doing that, you know. So yeah.
It sounds too like you in part, you know, kind of capitalized on opportunities even right from the start, right? Like you said, who meets Sandra Bullock in their store in their town, right? Like but so it almost sounds, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds like you capitalized on opportunities. You knew at least you wanted to be involved and kind of go after something related to that. And so you just like followed a course, saw what happened, made and got to like a decision point, and then made a decision, and that took you that way. And then that took you that way. And it was all of these, you know, not winding paths that you followed along to get to where you are versus, you know, someone that's kind of says like, I want to achieve this goal and go after it.
Yeah, it's very much like that. Like it's like, okay, this opened up for me, and then from there make the goals. You know, it's like, okay, this opened up for me, this is obviously a sign. Like, I don't care, you know, if you don't believe in God or anything, like, if whatever it is, it's like, I mean, again, Sandra Bullock shows up and you meet her, you know who she is, you're familiar with who she is, and she tells you to get into acting. What are you gonna do? You're gonna be like, no. It's like, yeah, tell me more, you know? Like, as a kid, like, it's just kind of one of those things where it's like, that is obviously a sign. And like I said, like, again and again and again, it was always just like, it was never easy. Like, you know, I tell some people this story or parts of my story, and they're like, oh, this was all handed to you, you know? And I'm like, it was never easy. Like, I did not have my own vehicle to get to these, like, my family didn't even have a car until, you know, high school, or not even high school. I think I was after Salem, I got my first vehicle. Like, most people get their first car when they're 16. I was working, like, you know, at a Mexican restaurant and having all these crazy jobs. And like, I didn't even have a car to get to them. I was just like, okay, maybe I'll meet someone and I can pay them gas money, or, you know, I'll find a friend and like pay them gas money to take me to work and pick me up, and, you know, that kind of thing. So it was never like given to me, and it wasn't easy, but it was very obvious when opportunity presented itself. And I was just in tune to recognize that and go along with it, you know? So,
yeah. And so did the modeling come before or after the management?
So yeah, because see, there's so many moving parts of the story, I always forget. So I was actually, when I was in college, I was working at the agency, and I mean, before I had taken the job at the agency, like right before, I met a friend of mine. I think because I work at a coffee shop, you know, I don't have an office, so I just work at a coffee shop. And I met this guy who actually got me on to this. It was like I think we were modeling like clothes or something. I forgot. It was like for a local boutique. It was nothing crazy. But I took those photos, and then it actually caught the eye of a friend of mine, which the photo of me in the red dress, that was the first photo that she had taken of me, like like that was the true professional photo that I have ever had of me, other than my headshots. And she was like this up and coming photographer. Her name's Angelia, or oh my gosh, Angela. Or I think it's Angela or Angelia. I don't remember. She's gonna hate me. But basically, she took that photo of me, and she just wanted to build her portfolio book. You know, it was just like, hey, I want to do this. And so she took that photo, and when she did, to me, I was just like, oh, like maybe I should do like something like along the lines of modeling. Like, I've never thought of that. Like, I'm 5'1", maybe. Like, I'm really short. I never thought of modeling. And so basically, after she took that photo, I posted it on my socials or whatever. And I had, like, you know, I have all these casting director friends, and they basically one of my other photographer friends contacted me and had me model for Creative Recreation, which is a shoe company. It's a really big shoe company. I mean, they have, you know, brands everywhere, but they partnered with Nick Jonas at that time. And I was just like, oh, I know who that is. Like, he's a really great artist. And basically, I was modeling some shoes. Like, I don't know if they were part of his collection and partnership with them, but either way, like, when my photos came out with Creative Recreation, it was around the same time that his thing launched. So I was like, I'm cool, you know? But basically, shortly after that, you know, I was working with the agency, and then Mercedes-Benz was actually calling our agency of like, hey, we need a model for this. And at that time, like, we had models, like actual models, but they saw my photo. I don't know how, I don't know if it was on the website or what. They saw my photo and they were like, we want her. And it was that, you know, photo that she took. And so they had me model, and I was just like, I'm about to model for Mercedes-Benz. Like, what? And this was while I was in college. And so I got to model for them. And that was like kind of like another turning point for me of like, oh, like maybe I could do this too. Like, not that I'm super interested in it, but it was definitely something that like, and I mean, it paid well. So it was, again, it was a monetary thing. It was just like, oh, this could help me like start my management company, or this could help me start like something else that I want to do, you know, some other kind of venture. So for me, that's kind of like how it happened and how I saw it. It was fun. It was different. Like I modeled a little bit as a kid, but not enough to say it was professionally, you know? But yeah, so.
It sounds like, you know, you viewed all of this as, you know, helpful to you in some way, like you said, whether it was financially or it was going to teach you something about the business or something like that.
Yeah.
And it also sounds like you've always, for lack of a better way of saying it, believed in yourself and the fact that you can do it and figure it out and go from there.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, that's pretty much how I've probably lived my whole life. And I know like that's kind of hard to grasp for some people, but for me it was really like, I mean, if I'm not going to do it, no one's going to do it for me kind of thing, you know, like if I'm not going to go ahead and make that phone call, or if I'm not going to go ahead and get through this audition, even though I hate the role, or I hate, you know, things about it or whatever. I was like, if I don't do this, then I can't go to the next thing. So like I said, with, you know, with goals, it's always like an opportunity presents itself and then I make goals from there, you know? So yeah.
So now you're a business owner and an artist manager. What are you finding easy and challenging?
Oh man. So easy would probably just be my whole job in general. Like I've had people ask me before, you know, what's the hard, like what's the ins and outs of the industry? Like, you know, what is this? And I always say that, you know, for me, it's never hard. Like, and I don't mean that in a like discouraging way of like, oh, if you're having a hard time, this isn't what you're supposed to do. But I just always find the joy and the excitement in it, you know? Like, I mean, we were just on the, like before, you know, the virus took over everyone's lives. We were finishing a show in Monroe, Louisiana with my artist, and their sound, like he was the opener, the sound guys, they were great. They did their job as best as they could. But when he stepped up on stage, his mic was not turned on. And that is their job. That's not my job. And so I went little manager mode, and it was frustrating, you know? So stuff like that, yes, it gets hard, but you know, that lasted for maybe 15 minutes, you know? So overall it was never hard. It hasn't been hard, but I will say something that's challenging is constantly having to re-strategize, you know, which I love, like I feed off of, but at the same time it is difficult and it is hard or challenging or whatever word you want to use, just because, you know, you come up with a marketing plan and you can't copyright marketing, you know? So if you have like a marketing plan and you come up with it and no one else has done it ever before, and you come up with it and you execute it well, other people are going to do it, even though you're planning to do it again, you know? And then it's like, oh man, like you see it online, and like, I mean, currently, you know, we have a marketing strategy that, you know, that I do with Garrett, and I'm noticing like it does very well, and other people are noticing it does very well. So they're starting to do it. And I'm like, give me a job. If you're going to take my marketing plan, give me the job. Like, you know, so that is something that's challenging so far. And yeah.
What have you learned about yourself throughout your journey?
Oh man. I have learned that I really have a problem with work. And I mean that in a good and a bad way. Like I have almost no, I've been working on it, so I'm going to give myself grace. I have almost no work-life balance. And I've learned that that is not healthy. You know, even if you love your job like I do, like I love it to death. But, you know, when I started, you know, my management company, and I left the agency, which was only last October, officially. I've had 318 management for over a year, but it has never been like official, like I'm actually doing this thing until last October. So it's kind of like, you know, when you're at a job that you don't really like that much, or, you know, you struggle with like, okay, I love it some days and I hate it other days. You always look forward to the weekend. You know, you always like, okay, like weekend's done, like I'm done with work. For me, that's how my life has been. Like, when I was working with the agency, I always looked forward to the weekend because my boss knew that I wasn't working on the weekend. I was usually, unless we had to do something, but, it was scheduled or planned. But for me, like, my job, first of all, is 24/7, essentially. Like Garrett, when he's touring, we're touring on the weekend, and I'm working on the business side during the week, and I'm currently his tour manager. So for me, it's like I'm still working, but when we're not touring, I don't know how to not work on the weekend. So I've had to implement this thing within myself of like, I have to still look forward to Friday. Like, I have to find a way to look forward to Friday. And what I've started doing is like every Friday at 3:18, because 318, at 3:18 I stop working every Friday. So that's kind of like something I've learned about myself, is that I will still work so much. Like, I will work all day. Like, literally, we and Garrett is like my brother. Like, he is like my little brother. Like, I'm so close with his family. Like, they're like my own. And so it's like I will be on the phone with him or his mom, or we're even on a 3-way FaceTime or something, and I'll start talking about work, and it's like 7:00, and then I'm like, oh, I can't do that. I can't do that. Like, I can't do that to him. I can't do that to myself. So I gotta not.
That's a good strategy.
Yeah.
What advice would you give an up and coming performer or entrepreneur?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So there's two different things. Upcoming performer, I would say really, like, if you are just performing, try to get into songwriting, because the main thing is, like, as an artist, if you cannot feel what you're singing, like, truly, and be authentic to that, people are gonna know. They're gonna see right through it. They're gonna be like, this guy, like, you hear it all the time. Like, some artists, I can't think of anyone, like, I'm not referencing anyone in particular, but some artists could get up on stage and you hear them sing about weed, whiskey, and Willie, and you're like, that doesn't fit you, bro. Like, no, like, you can't, so it's the same thing. It's like, as an artist, if you are gonna perform songs that are true to you, true to your brand, if you even have that established yet, and if you don't, that's your first go-to. But as far as entrepreneurs, it's, oh man, this is a whole nother podcast in itself. But I would probably just say that, if you feel like you should quit your current job and do whatever it is that you're really wanting to do it. Like, it took me, I was in my agency situation for longer than I should have been, and it was all because of the fear of I don't know, it was like financially, and it was also like almost like an attachment. Like, I've worked so hard with this company, I've done so much, I've like brought so much to the table, how could I leave them high and dry if I leave, but then it's kind of like, but then you're doing yourself a disservice and you're doing them a disservice for staying, so I would say, if you're a true entrepreneur and you've had an idea or a concept or something, and it's been on your mind for a while and it hasn't left, go ahead, quit your job and just do it. Like, you have to put yourself in the situation to make yourself do it. Otherwise, like, you're never going to get it done, and you're going to look back one day and wish that you'd done it. Yeah.
Have you ever felt as if you were faking it in anything that you've done?
No. I mean, I would say maybe like when I was working on Salem, just because I knew that I didn't want to act at that point, but I got the part, so it was like, oh, I can do it. Like, faking it is like acting in general. Like, in acting, you were always faking it. But I truly did love it as a kid, like, I truly did enjoy going on set and having those different roles and like figuring out characters and mannerisms and learning, like, okay, when I move my face a certain way, other people perceive this as me being mad. I love the theory of that. And I truly did enjoy it. But growing up, I mean, when you don't want to do it for a career and you feel bad, like, I did feel bad about taking it from someone else. I was like, someone else could have this role that really wants to do this. But at the same time, I was like, me, I need it. So I've never felt like I was faking it. It was more of, other than that, maybe that one time of, okay, I just need to get through this so I can financially, be able to move to Nashville and live comfortably for a while. But aside from that, no.
It makes me wonder, I'm guilty of setting goals. And then once I reach the goal, the luster, not always, but sometimes the luster of that goal wears off. Do you think that was part of what happened with acting or anything else, that you were kind of like, take it or leave it?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. I would say yes and no. Only no, because acting was truly never like my calling to do. It was never like, I was not placed on this earth to be an actress. And who knows? Like, I mean, I might go in and like do another part here and there just for the reminiscence of doing it, but it was never like, I was never meant to be a Sandra Bullock, And so for me, like, achieving the goals, I would say like I needed to achieve those goals at the time. Like, it's all a story that unfolds in some form, whether we recognize it in that time or 5 years from now, but I feel that the goals themselves were necessary, and like for you, I'm sure they were necessary, and sure, they kind of wear off and the excitement of achieving them wears off, but then you have other goals. So, for me, I'm just like, okay, like, keep moving on. Like, I have a goal planner, actually. Like, I can recommend it to you if you want me to, but I have a goal planner that really helps me like stay on top of things. And looking back, they're necessary. They're all necessary. If there is a goal that you're going after, it's necessary at some point, especially once you achieve it.
And when you set those goals, or you're using your goal planner, do you set those daily, or are they longer term goals, or both?
So they're both. So I have it's called a full focus planner by Michael Hyatt, and it's so helpful. Like, I actually started this planner last year, and it's a quarterly planner. So I have one for each quarter. So when you use it, you open it in the front, and it has like your yearly goals, like your annual goals, or basically for each quarter. And they tell you there's like only 10, you can only make 10 goals per year, because it's proven that if you make more than 10 a year, you'll never accomplish half of them and you'll get overwhelmed. It's like scientific fact. So I make 10 goals. And then from there are on the daily pages, you have your daily goals, but every day you reflect on your annual goals. So basically, it's kind of like training yourself to break down those big goals, so that way you're accomplishing them every single day, or you're accomplishing something that moves you towards that goal.
And so Lauren and I, we have a background in studying expertise. And one of the big questions, it's not just us, it's since humans have been around, it's the question of nature versus nurture. And so an extreme view of nature would be that we're born with something. There's nothing that we have to do. The extreme view of nurture would be we're born with basically nothing, and everything that happens to us determines our outcome. And then, of course, there's everything in between. If you were to attribute your success, or even others, if you don't want to be personal about it, what is your view on that breakdown, percentage-wise? Do you think that it's more one than the other? What numbers would you give that?
Oh, man, that is such a complex question. Like, honestly, I think that's above me. Wow, I love that you guys do that, though. That's so interesting. I definitely have to read in on that. I would say, I mean, for me, and as far as like how I live my life and what I believe, I definitely believe that everything does happen for a reason. And, like I said, whether, some people want to see that as, God, or, whatever it may be. But for me, that is what it is like, I know that, everything that's happened to me has been a blessing or a lesson in some form of, like, whether I'm, not being obedient to him or myself, or, it's all kind of like interconnected, if that makes sense. So that's kind of how I view it. I couldn't say like one or the other, because that is very, like, when you think about it, like, that's such a, like, I need to think on this. Like, I need to drink my coffee on the patio and just like think about my life right now.
Well, let me reframe it a little bit. If you, so let's say that you are given these gifts, using that approach, what would happen had you not worked? Do you think that you would have, do you think that the work was necessary, I guess, in order to achieve them?
Okay. Yes, 100%. I feel like had I not taken those opportunities that were presented to me, it would have taken me longer to get where I was supposed to go, or I would never get there. I would have never gotten to where I am currently today. And it would just be a disservice to what I was supposed to do because, thinking about it, like had I not taken all of those steps and I'd never, went out and been like, oh, I got this phone call from a friend who has a friend that needs help in the industry, and I wouldn't have answered that. And I was just like, I don't have time for that today, or I don't want to do it. I don't feel like I can tell them about the industry. Garrett would not have a manager. Garrett would not have his music out in the world. And, since then, like his music has touched people in different ways. And he gets, he calls and tells me about stuff all the time of what people have said to him, So that wouldn't have happened. So it's almost like a ripple effect, because who knows, like one of his songs could inspire some 5-6-year-old today who is like, I want to be him when I grow up and I want to be an artist. And who knows, that person's going to be the next Taylor Swift. We have no idea, and I contributed to that whether I knew it or not, So yeah, I definitely think that had I not taken those opportunities and trusted my instincts and did that, like I just wouldn't be here, no one would. Like if there's every choice in everyone's life leads to something, and if you don't take them, they're going to lead different ways. Like that is what I truly believe, and whether that is, your calling or not. So
at this point in your career and now having your own management company, where do you think life is going to take you, or where are you wanting it to take you?
Yeah. Oh man. So again, I'm going to reflect back on my goals. I have a lot of things that I'm going to do, within management. As of right now, I'm not looking to manage another artist. Like I really want to have all my attention and focus in on one. But eventually I do want to kind of like possibly venture off, and have, build Garrett's career up so much to where, he has me as a manager and I'm always going to be his manager in day to day, but I can kind of like dabble into other people and music and kind of see, what I want to do. But I also really want to get into philanthropy and giving back, just because I love that aspect. And right now, like my company is very small, financially cannot contribute hardly anything to anyone to help. But, when it comes to like coaching other people that are interested in management or, giving pointers or something and like giving back to the community in some way, I definitely want to get into that. And I eventually want to get into the tech world, of the tech side of things, because our generation, and that's just where we're all going, like data is the biggest currency right now, whether people realize it or not, and like it's scary, but at the same time, that's something I want to kind of get into and like learn more about. So
financially, it's more lucrative than oil. So
yeah,
especially now, but even before.
Seriously, especially right now, for sure.
Anything that we haven't asked you that you feel is important for the listeners to know?
No, you guys have been great. Y'all are like, I'm like sitting here like, okay, am I talking too much? Like, no, this is good. Okay.
No.
But everybody says that to us. It's okay. It's by design.
I'm just like, because I'm not that good at like talking about myself, because I'm like trying to remember memories and like things that have happened. And I'm like, oh, like it's happened so many times during this conversation where it's like, oh yeah, I forgot. I also did this, But yeah, no, we covered it all, I think.
And what would you say is the biggest takeaway from your story?
Oh my gosh, about myself? Oh, I don't know. The biggest takeaway, I would say, is just trusting my gut instincts. I think that would be it. Like it's been a common theme throughout my life of like, and that's not to say that I've always been right, but just really going with my gut and with being able to realize that, it's like if something is bothering me and I can't sleep at night, it's probably because it's true. Like if I'm thinking like weighing on a certain decision, like if it's, even to the point of like does my boyfriend really love me? And if I keep at night, if I'm like, nope, he doesn't, it usually is true. You know, but even professionally, yeah, it's the same way. I feel like if I'm like, should I call that person? Should I call them and ask them, you know, to talk about Garrett or his music or something? Should I do it? And usually if I don't do it and it continues to bother me, I'm like, I should do it. So
well, that's very sage advice. And Desiree, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us. Your story is fascinating.
Thank you.
Yeah,
thank
you
y'all
so much.
for reaching out.
The Path Distilled is hosted by Kevin Harris and Lauren Tashman, created and produced by Kevin Harris. The content is copyrighted by The Path Distilled, all rights